Hello there, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed the last video. This is video 15. Video 14 was over at Sweetland in Wales, and yeah, what a day. What a fantastic day. And yeah, thoroughly enjoyed it. Really good. Hope you enjoyed it too. Sorry I didn't film more, but as I said in that video, you know, I see so many people these days, they go to concerts and they film the whole bloody thing. You know, you don't enjoy the concert, you're just making film for everybody else. It's just crazy. So yeah, I wanted to just enjoy that. And also bear in mind, if you are a YouTuber, okay, and you are monetized, if you are making videos like I did on Thursday, you need to tell your insurance company that you are using your vehicle to travel to the places where you are making videos. Okay, I found this out by accident. Very good girl who works at Howden's, I can't remember her name now, I think it was Emma, and she said, are you employed? No, I said, I'm retired, I'm just doing YouTube videos. And she said, are you monetized? I said, yeah. She said, do you go to places and make videos? I said, I have done, yeah. She said, well then you need to put that on your insurance because it's classed as business use. So be very careful. It doesn't matter if you're not monetized because it's not business, you're not using it to make money. But if you are a YouTuber and your insurance company finds out that you've been using your vehicle to travel to places like shows or events or whatever, concerts, whatever it may be, and you're putting that content on your videos, then you may find your insurance is null and void. You have been warned. Yeah, so I mean, there was no cost. There was no additional cost on the insurance. I just had to declare it. So so there we go. Bear that one in mind. So yeah, moving forward, we are now looking at putting the pistons in the engine, and we're also going to be looking at using something called Plastigauge. This isn't actually Plastigauge. This is from the ACL bearing company in Rockerley, Tasmania, Australia. So I think it was Clevite on the packet, it said, I can't remember now. But this is called Flexigauge. ACL Flexigauge, there we go. Okay, and it's basically, as you can see, if I open this up, you can see it's like a very fine, see just inside there, it's like a very fine plastic strip, and I'll show you in a minute what we do with it and how we measure bearings with it. So this is a piston attached to a comrod, and what we're going to do, we're going to clock the rings, get everything oiled, put it in a ring compressor, fit it to the block. Lots and lots of little hazards along the way that you need to be aware of if you're going to have a go at building an engine yourself. So let's get the camera on the bench onto the engine, which is behind me, and go from there. I fitted one piston because I wanted to make sure the bearing clearances were okay, because obviously if I need to order new bearings, then I need to wait until the bearings come before I make this video. So I fitted one so I could check the bearing clearance, and the bearing clearance is right on bottom limit. So the limit is, I've got it written down there, it's 1,200ths or 1,200 to 3,700, and they're about 1,200. So this engine is absolutely incredible. It's incredible. So I've mucked the crank and made sure it's round and everything, so I've checked that it's not lobed. I don't have the equipment to measure the bore in here, but you can generally see if you've got swipe marks like you can see on here, then it's nothing to worry about. It's when you get scoring, tearing, burning, marks on the crank, whatever, that's when you've got to worry. But remember, I didn't strip this engine down because it needed a rebuild. I stripped this engine down because it had an oil leak, and then it had bent valves, and then it had bent springs. I just thought, sod it, I may as well just rebuild the whole thing because all the seals are going to need replacing. Why not just check the bearings and that while we're there? So the old engine's had a good old clean out. It's all like new again. So it's having a 43-year refresh. Let's get to the bench. Okay, so here you can see on the bench we have the piston. This is number 2. The rods on this engine are marked, as you can see there, with the 2 and the 2, so you get them the right way round and it shows you which one it is. I haven't removed the pistons from the rod because there's no need. As you can see, everything has been cleaned. The rings are all spotlessly clean. The grooves are all cleaned out. Everything's nice. Everything's been cleaned with carb cleaner, so you can see there the grooves are nice and clean in behind. Make sure the rings move freely. They need to be like this and all rattle around really. There's no obvious signs of wear or anything, so I'm not worrying about measuring clearances or anything like that, because there's nothing worn out here. It's all bloody lovely. It's unbelievably good for how old it is. The actual gudgeon pin is cleaned and everything. As I say, I haven't removed it. There's always the risk of scratching the piston when you get these clips out. And also it's just best to leave it alone. If it doesn't need to be changed, I mean, there's no play in there whatsoever. There's no rock or anything, so just don't bother taking it off. Make sure all the oil holes are clear. Blow them all through with an airline, and everything is good. Make sure then you've blown around the oil rings, the control oil ring as well, and just make sure there's no dirt, debris, dust or anything. As you can see, I've got them here, albeit a dirty rag, but they're underneath a rag to protect them, and they get a final clean just before they go in anyway. Everything gets cleaned with paraffin, then it gets cleaned with carb cleaner, and then it gets cleaned again before it goes in. Cleanliness is number one here, guys. So I'm going to go and charge up the compressor, because I think it's probably lost its charge by now, and then I can blow all these oil holes out and make sure everything's all nice and clean. So back in a second. Okay, so I've done that now. It's had brake cleaner on it. I've blown out the holes. We've got oil holes here, okay, and we've got holes in here. Now these are very important to make sure they're clean. You can probably see on there, there's a little nubbin sticking up there on the bottom of the con rod. There's a hole there, and that is oil is pressure fed from the crank, and it sprays up and lubricates the cylinder walls. And also with modern engines, it helps to keep the piston cool. A lot of modern engines now have squirters in them, and they squirt oil into the bottom of the piston, especially turbocharged engines. A lot of people say you don't need them. The manufacturers wouldn't put them in there if you didn't need them. So there we go. That's the way I always think. We've also got oil holes here where it's going to be spraying up oil into there to the gudgeon pin as well. So sorry, you can't see them because I'm looking at them. Oil holes here where the squirters will squirt oil up into the gudgeon pin. So we need to make sure that's all well lubricated before it goes back together for that initial start. When you turn it over, you take the plugs out, you know, leave the coil disconnected, whatever, turn it over to get the oil pressure up. But when you get the oil pressure up, it won't be squirting out of here until you actually get the engine running. So, you know, we need to make sure it's lubricated for that initial start. You get a bit of an initial smoke on startup, but don't worry about that. So the main thing to do here, there's something that a lot of people forget, is you need to time the piston rings. Now you can see here, if I put these piston rings like this, you can see the gap in the piston ring there, there and there, okay? So they're all aligned. So we don't want them like that. What we want to do is turn them so they're all 120 degrees opposed. So I'm going to put the top ring there, okay? The second ring is here, and then the oil control ring will go, or the oil ring will go there. So when we actually look at the top of the piston, we've got the top ring gap is there, the second ring gap is there, and the oil ring gap is there. So 1, 2, 3, that's how you want it, okay? It doesn't need to be perfectly 120 degrees, just get them opposed. It makes, if you have them in line, it makes an easy path for the gases to pass through, but also you'll end up with one line of wear in the bore, whereas having it like this, you've got these two rings where in the bore where there's a gap, you've got these two rings where in the bore is a gap, you get what I mean. And when these are actually compressed, the ring closes right up and the gap is tiny. Ring end gap is something you need to check when you're building an engine. This is absolutely fine. There's no wear in the bores, there's no broken rings, there's no wear on the pistons. There is nothing that concerns me whatsoever, so I'm not going to bother taking the rings off. There is always a chance when you take the rings off they will break because they are cast, they are very brittle, and they will break. So you don't want to go doing that because you can't just buy one ring, you have to buy a whole set. So there you go, you have been warned. Now the next thing to do here is fit the spring compressor, which needs to be very well oiled. That's not a spring compressor, ring compressor. This is a piston ring compressor. Okay, so that's going to slide over there. You can see that on one end it has these raised areas. Okay, so that's to sit on top of the bore as you press the piston in. But what we do, we compress that, it pulls the rings in so that it will slide into the bore. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to change the angle of the camera and then show you doing this. And before we do that, we're going to slather it in oil. So let's get the camera moved. Okay, so first things first, we need to remove the bearing cap. Now, I know that one of these pistons, the bearings won't stay in. And I've got a feeling it's this one. Because I've written on here cap, so I know which is the cap and which is the rod. So take that out of there. Pull it nice and square. You can see I've written on there cap, so that I know which is which. But I've got a feeling, yeah, that bearing will not stay in there. So we'll put that to one side. Okay, we can make sure that's all nice and clean in there. That's all good, everything's nice and clean. So what we're going to do now is fit the ring compressor onto the piston. Now, the first thing we have to do is check the ring compressor is set correctly, and it's not. Okay, so we're going to grab, I'm not prepared again, sorry guys. So we're going to grab this tool here, and then we can undo the ring compressor to open it up. Okay, and then I'm going to take the piston and cover it in oil. Make sure the rings are really well oiled, because you want everything just to slide together nicely. You don't want anything to break or have any friction on it or anything. Sorry, I'm off camera, aren't I? Okay, so there we go. And you want the piston to slide easily down into the ring compressor as well. You don't want it all tight in there. Okay, so what we can do now is put this in a vise, just like this. I've got aluminium jaws on here, so I can put the piston like that. Make sure I don't trap the wings of the piston, as it were, in the vise. Make sure I'm only holding the com rod. There we go. Piston's free to move. Com rod is gripped, so that's all good. That's not going anywhere. So now we can just check once again our 120 degrees with our rings. One there, one there. Yeah, you see that one's moved. So one there, one there, one there. That's great. So they're all in position. I'm going to put oil on the ring compressor just to make sure. Okay, and then pass the ring compressor down over the rings, just like so. And then I could use this tool. I just turned it, didn't I? That was a stupid thing to do. I may have dislocated the rings. Unwind it. 1, 2, yes I did. It did turn the rings. Look, it turned them. So be very careful. Right, so slide that down over the top. Pull this together. Just going to check those rings again, because I let this go too far. I'm messing up here on camera, guys. I'm sorry. It always happens when the camera's on. The modelling channel's exactly the same. Then Dottie starts barking, which is a pain in the ass. Dottie finally stopped barking. So that's on there now. I mean, it needs to be sort of tight enough to hold the rings in, but loose enough that you can actually tap the piston down through it. So it's quite hard to feel when it's just right. Sometimes when I did Land Rover engine, remember I did one too tight. So now that's on there, we can take this out of the vise, making sure we don't drop it. We can stand it up, and then we can lubricate our small end gudgeon pin. Put some oil in those holes. Okay. Make sure everything's dripping wet with oil. All right. And then the other thing we're going to do, to protect the crankshaft when we fit into the engine, we're going to put these little rubber caps. When you get new brake lines and stuff, they often come with little plastic caps. Never throw them away, keep them. They're so handy for stuff like this. So those caps on there, when we drop the crank down in the engine, if they touch the crankshaft, then it won't damage it. Okay, so that's why we put those on. So I'm going to go over to the engine block now. So I'm going to bring the camera around, and then I'll show you the fitting of the piston into the block. Okay, so first things first, make sure the bore is nice and clean. Make sure it's got some oil in it. And make sure you have no burrs on the top edge. What I've done before I cleaned this, I went around and just used a little scraper and just put a tiny little edge remover on here. You need the tiniest little chamfer you can get just to help the rings go in. And then you just simply drop your piston in. Now I want to make sure that my con rod is in the correct position. No, not the crank con rod, sorry, the crankshaft. Oh, no, con rod. The crankshaft needs to be in the correct position. So I've got a 24mm spanner here. I can put this on there, and what I'm doing is I'm turning it so that the number 2 is at bottom dead center, so that there's less likelihood of the rod touching the bearing. You'll notice I haven't oiled anything with the bearings. That's because I'm going to be using Plastigage. If I'd previously checked everything, I would be lubricating it as it goes together. But what I'm doing here, checking it with Plastigage, and then I'll lubricate it after. The other thing to make sure here is make sure the piston is going in the right way. So you can see on here, it's obvious with this engine, because we've got valve cutouts, a large one here, a small one here. Large is intake side. This is the intake side, the right hand side, well, the left hand side of the engine actually, the right hand side as I'm looking at it here. So make sure that's on there. Some engines will have an arrow to show which way they go, but this is basic stuff. You can look at it really easily. So we're going to drop this down in here. Okay, I always fit my pistons vertically. I never put them in sideways, because that way the rod doesn't touch the bore. Okay, the rod is just hanging there. It's not going to touch anything. So what we can do now is just gently tap the piston, and it should go in. If you have to start hitting it hard, stop, take it out, adjust your ring compressor, because it's obviously, if you can't hit the piston, it's too tight, and if the piston won't go over the lip, the ring won't go, then the compressor is too loose. So you can see there the piston is in, and it'll stay there under its own friction. So what we can do now is swing the block over. Okay, I'm keeping a finger on it just in case, because you never know. And you can see there, you can probably see there, I'll bring the camera over so you can see there, where are we? You can see there, that bolt is touching the crank, okay? I don't know if you can see it or not, bloody camera work is useless. So yeah, that's why we put those little rubber caps on. Okay, so we'll swing the engine over, just like so. Put that in there just for safety. Okay, and then I can put my hand underneath and I can just pull the rod up. All right, and then what I've got to try and do, in fact I'm going to push it down. I've got to try and get that bearing shell in. What I should have done was stuck it in with a bit of grease or something. But, it's very unusual they don't stay in there. So I'm going to take this cap off of here, and then I can slide this shell over the crank and let it drop. I hate wearing these bloody gloves, they get stuck under everything. Okay, I got that bearing in, that was a nightmare. But what I should have done was stuck it in with a little drop of grease or something. You can actually give them a little tweak and make them stay in, but this one seems to be staying in now on its own. But it doesn't really matter, once it's in there it can come out. So what we're going to do now is fit the cap and do some Plastigage. As you notice, I haven't lubricated the bearing at all, and this is why. So this is our Plastigage, and as you can see, it's a little thin plastic strip in there. So I'm just going to cut a piece. This is a pain filming this, I got to be honest guys, because I've got to now cut this, and now I've got to move back to the engine. So I'm just cutting a little piece of this off. Come on, out you come. A little piece there, and I'm going to lay that on top of the crank. I'll show you now. Okay, so I've got my little piece of Plastigage here. Okay, I'm just going to lay that across the top of the bearing. Now I've just broken it, but not to worry, doesn't matter. Okay, I'll lay that across the top of the bearing like that. So it's two pieces. I don't know if you can see that, but it's absolutely tiny. And then I'm going to refit the cap, and I'm going to make sure I've got the number on the right side. So the number 2 is on this side, and the number 2 is on this side, so that means the cap's the right way. Make sure the faces are spotless, and then I will drop this down onto there. Okay, I'm going to put a tiny drop of oil on the backs of the nuts. I'm not moving the bloody camera again. Put a tiny drop of oil on the backs of the nuts and a tiny drop on the thread, just so we don't get any binding. Okay, if you look at specifications for nuts and everything, they will always say minimal lubrication. Okay, you should never do them dry. and you should never flood them either. If you buy ARP stuff, it usually comes with its own lubrication. So I'm just going to nip these down just until I can feel them just pulling. Okay, now these are only 37 pounds-feet, which isn't very tight at all. And this is another beauty of this engine, you're not having to replace nuts and bolts and everything. Modern engines, you have to replace bloody everything. Okay. Just pull them down evenly. There we go. There's 37. There's 37 on that one. Okay. So now we can take a ratchet and another 14mm socket, and we can undo them. We'll undo them evenly. Oh, blimey, the engine's moving on its stand now. There we go. Right. So we'll take the nuts off. We can stand them on the sides of the block, lift the bearing cap up, and then we can look at our plastic gauge now. I'm not sure how well you can see this on the camera. Much easier here if I hold the camera. So what you can see here, you've got the clearance range in millimeters, and then here we've got the clearance range in thous. Now I know that this has to be, there it is there, okay, 1 2/10 to 2 9/10. Okay, so I think I said 3 thou earlier, didn't I? I shouldn't have said 3 thou. What I've done is cut a piece of that off so it's a narrow strip, so it's much easier to use. So you can see 1 thou, 1.5 thou, 2 thou, 3 thou. So basically on bottom limit, we want to be between the first two graduations. So basically what this is telling us is, where am I? Got my bloody finger over the lens. What this is telling us is from there to there, the width of that green band, if it's squished that wide, it's a thou clearance. If it's squished that wide, it's 1.5 thou. If it's that far, it's 2. If it's that, it's 3. Okay, so what we're going to do now is take the camera over to the engine and this, and we can see on there, you can see the plastic gauge material is squished. So we can look at the distance and we can see that it's narrower than 1, and there it's wider than 1.5. So we are about 1.2 to 1.5 to 1.5 thou, which is right at bottom end. So these are absolutely brilliant. So what we have to do now is clean that off. Okay, you can also see some black ink on there, and that was because I wrote cap on that bearing. So I'm just cleaning this off with my fingernail. Okay, you could use some brake cleaner. All right, just scratching my nose. And then what I'm going to do is push this cap away, lubricate it, and then bolt it all up. Okay, so I've lubricated in there, and now we can just fit this cap, just pull these down, just like so. Okay, and I'm going to go and torque them all together. All I'm doing is pulling them down like this. Now I'm not torquing them down individually, I'll just do them all together at the end. So I've now got to do the same for the next 2 cylinders, and then that's the bottom end built and done. So there we go. I'll see you when I've done it and you can see it all together. Okay, so there we go. They're all in, all 4, and I've got a 24mm spanner here. I'm just going to gently, very gently turn over and make sure there's no binding or anything. Obviously it's a little bit sticky because it's, you know, it's not warm, it's not bedded in or anything, but just check there's nothing binding or anything like that. So as you can see, it's turning over absolutely lovely. There's no, I'm looking for marks in the bore, so you know, we haven't got a broken ring or anything. You should see a mark where the oil will leave a line. We don't have any scratching or anything, there's no grating noises. Everything is nice and smooth. As you can see, it's me making it jerky. There you go. If I keep it going, it's smooth, just like so. Okay, So there we are. Remember as well, if you've got one of these engines and you're timing it up, number 4, top dead centre firing, not number 1. So make sure when you do it, your distributor is facing number 4, not number 1. Okay, when these marks line up, it's number 4 firing. Right, so there we are, that's that done. So, what we need to do now, in fact what I need to do now, is turn this crankshaft. This is what I talked about before. If you're going to be doing your valves and you don't have the cam belt connected, you've got top dead centre here. I can come round here, I can show you. We've got a Woodruff key. Where's the front of the engine? There it is. We've got a Woodruff key there, facing up. I'm going to turn the crank 90 degrees, okay? And as you can see, that puts all the pistons down the bores. And then if the cam belt's not connected, you are now free to turn your cams all you want and you won't damage anything. You can imagine if the pistons are like this, number 2 and 3 will be fine, but you're going to drive the valves into pistons 1 and 4. So just turn the crank 90 degrees, just like so, and then all the pistons are halfway down the bore and you've got no worry about any interference with the valves. I'm doing that now because what I'm going to do is turn this engine upside down, so it's going to be head face down, put it on my raising trolley and then take it off the engine stand to fit the rear crank seal. But that will be for tomorrow's video. I'll see you soon. Thank you for watching. I won't make you wait till next week. So here you can see we've got this little lifting trolley here. It's on wheels, and you can see the engine here is on the engine stand. So what I'm going to do, I've got a rug on there to protect the engine. So I'm just going to lift. Okay, just pump this table up. These things are absolutely brilliant. They come from Machine Mart. It's got a 500 kilo load. And they're absolutely brilliant. It's like a table on wheels, and I've used this for so much. It's so fantastic. If you've got a car up in the air and you want to get something up underneath, like an axle or something, absolutely brilliant. So all I need to do now is take the pin out and then come along and slide the engine stand away. I'm going to take this opportunity to do all these bloody wheels because they're driving me nuts with the squeaking. So we can move the engine stand. Sorry about that. Move the engine stand out of the way, and then with our 19mm spanner, just undo these bolts, just like so. Just like I've got paint on them as well. So we just take these bolts off, and then we can, they're 17. Just take these bolts out, and then we can remove the actual frame from the engine, and we can go on and fit the rear seal. So I'll see you back. I am going to do that tomorrow. I'm not going to do that now. I'll see you then.